A war hero returns home, but the war inside him never ended. Haunted by loss and treated like an unwanted drifter, the pain and injustice he faces slowly push him toward retaliation. What follows is a brutal manhunt that turns a quiet town into a battlefield. John Rambo, a former U.S. Army Special Forces legend and Medal of Honor recipient from the Vietnam War, wanders across America trying to outrun the trauma of his past. In 1980, the quiet drifter arrives at a lakeside home, searching for an old war buddy, only to learn from the man's mother that he died of cancer caused by Agent Orange exposure from the war.
Died last summer.
Shaken and heartbroken, Rambo hands her a photo of their Vietnam squad and walks away, carrying the weight of lost comrades and unresolved memories. By evening, the lone veteran continues down the highway and eventually reaches the small town of Hope, Washington, unaware that new conflicts are about to drag him back into the fight. In this town, the controlling and prideful sheriff Will Teasel notices the long-haired Rambo and immediately assumes he's trouble. Determined to keep his peaceful town free of drifters, Teasel forces Rambo into his patrol car under the guise of helping him. When Rambo says he's heading to Portland to find food, the suspicious sheriff doesn't believe him and drops him miles outside town, warning him never to return. But as rain begins to fall, Rambo quietly walks back toward Hope, unwilling to be pushed around. Seeing this as defiance, Teasel angrily blocks his path again and tries to manhandle him.
All right, you're under arrest.
Enraged and humiliated, the sheriff arrests Rambo at gunpoint, finds a large combat knife on him, and drags him to the station where he charges the silent veteran with vagrancy, resisting arrest, and carrying a concealed weapon, while the deputies mock his appearance and force him to take a shower. The barred windows, weapons, and rough treatment trigger painful memories of his captivity and torture in Vietnam, pushing Rambo into a defensive state where he refuses to cooperate or even speak. The deputies rip off his dog tags, mock his service, and struggle to fingerprint him until Sheriff Teasel arrives, threatening him with jail time and ordering the officers to clean him up before his morning trial. When Rambo is forced to strip, the police notice his body covered in deep war scars.
Look at this.
But instead of sympathy, they respond with cruelty. Deputy Galt violently strikes him with a baton, and the officers hose him down like an animal for their amusement. As they try to shave him with a straight razor, the moment triggers intense flashbacks of his wartime torture, causing Rambo to snap. He grabs his combat knife, escapes the station, steals a motorcycle, and speeds off while the furious deputies give chase, with Teasel holding Galt back from shooting into the crowded street. If you're enjoying the story so far, don't forget to drop a like on the video. Rambo flees on a stolen motorcycle while Sheriff Teasel chases him into the rugged mountains, but the pursuit ends when Teasel crashes and Rambo escapes on foot into the wilderness. As the sheriff launches a full manhunt with dogs and a helicopter, the highly trained veteran navigates the forest using a compass hidden in his knife and climbs toward a cliff above a river. A helicopter carrying Deputy Galt spots him, but the reckless officer ignores orders and fires to kill. With no way out, Rambo makes a desperate leap off the cliff, surviving the fall but injuring his arm. Taking cover behind trees, he throws a rock that destabilizes the helicopter, causing Galt to fall to his death on the rocks below. Rambo then takes the dead deputy's rifle and disappears deeper into the forest along the riverbank. Sheriff Teasel soon finds Deputy Galt's dead body, while Rambo, wounded but resourceful, patches himself up and briefly tries to surrender, insisting he doesn't want anyone else hurt. Teasel refuses to listen and opens fire, forcing Rambo back into the forest as a storm approaches and the search team argues over the sheriff's reckless decisions. Using his survival skills and the rifle he took earlier, Rambo turns the dense woods into his battlefield, injuring officers, misleading them with traps and decoys, and disabling their dogs. One by one, he incapacitates the pursuing deputies without killing them until only Teasel remains. Rambo ambushes the sheriff, holds a knife to his throat, and warns that he could have killed them all, but only wants to be left alone before disappearing into the darkness with a police radio, while the wounded officers are evacuated and state police arrive. Just as Colonel Sam Troutman, Rambo's former commander, shows up at the scene. Colonel Sam Troutman arrives and reveals he trained Rambo in Vietnam, warning Sheriff Teasel that Rambo is an elite soldier capable of surviving impossible conditions, and that the only reason the deputies are alive is because Rambo chose not to kill them. He advises leaving Rambo alone and letting the army handle it later, but Teasel refuses, driven by pride and determined to capture him with hundreds of officers. That night, Rambo survives in the mountains, hunts a boar for food, and shelters in an abandoned cabin where police contact him over the stolen radio. When Troutman uses Rambo's old call sign, Raven, the veteran finally responds, revealing that all his fellow soldiers are dead.
I'm the last one, sir.
And blaming the sheriff for starting the conflict, refusing to surrender. By morning, the police track his location and close in, but Rambo slips through the forest again, briefly sparing a young hunter before other hunters alert the authorities. Cornered near an abandoned mine, Rambo is surrounded by police who open fire, only for him to answer with a burst of machine gun fire. Please subscribe to the channel before watching ahead. When Rambo refuses the police ultimatum to surrender, the officers fire a rocket launcher into the mine, collapsing the entrance and believing the explosion has killed him as they celebrate and even take photos. Sheriff Teasel soon arrives, furious that his orders not to shoot were ignored. Inside the dark tunnels, however, Rambo survives by moving deeper into the mine, lighting a makeshift torch and navigating flooded passages and swarms of rats until he follows fresh airflow to an escape. Back in town, Teasel and Troutman briefly talk at a bar, both unsure if Rambo survived, but the answer comes quickly. Rambo ambushes a passing military convoy, hijacks a truck loaded with M60 machine guns and ammunition, and throws the driver out before speeding away. When a police car chases and fires at him, Rambo forces it off the road, sending it crashing as he drives straight back toward town. Rambo smashes through a police roadblock and drives back into Hope, crashing an army truck into a gas station and igniting a massive explosion that blocks the highway and slows the pursuing police. Armed with a heavy machine gun, he enters town as Sheriff Teasel declares a state of emergency and orders residents to stay inside. Colonel Troutman confronts Teasel at the station, warning that Rambo survived and urging him to let Troutman mediate since Rambo still trusts him. But the stubborn sheriff refuses to back down and prepares to face Rambo himself. Meanwhile, Rambo sabotages the town by shooting electrical transformers and plunging block after block into darkness, then distracts the police with gunfire before blowing up a gun store by igniting its ammunition. Amid the chaos and explosions, Teasel takes position on the station rooftop, but Rambo spots him and unleashes heavy gunfire on the building before entering. Teasel fires first, wounding Rambo, but Rambo shoots through the roof, sending the injured sheriff crashing through a skylight to the floor below. As Rambo prepares to finish him, Colonel Troutman arrives and pleads with him to stop, while the defiant Teasel continues provoking the battle-hardened veteran. As Colonel Troutman pleads with him to stop, Rambo finally breaks his silence and erupts in anger and grief, saying he never asked for help and that this has become his own war. He bitterly explains that after risking his life in Vietnam, trusted with million-dollar equipment and surrounded by comrades who are now all dead, he returned home only to be treated like a worthless drifter who can't even get a simple job. Overwhelmed, Rambo recalls the horrific memories of war, including watching a close friend die in a brutal explosion, and confesses that the trauma never left him, leaving him isolated and unable to talk to anyone except the ghosts of his fallen comrades. The tough soldier finally breaks down in tears as Troutman embraces him, and exhausted from the fight both outside and within himself, Rambo peacefully surrenders to the police. Thanks for watching, and be sure to come back for the next part.